So the first policy area that we will get into is the next generation neighbourhood precinct, or the next gen precinct. So the next gen precinct was established when the MBRC planning scheme commenced in 2016, and it is intended to provide the greatest mix of dwelling types to support densities moderately higher than our traditional suburban areas. Housing forms in next gen precincts include detached dwellings, sort of on a variety of lot sizes, a greater range of attached dwellings, and low to medium rise apartment buildings. But importantly, the next gen precincts are those areas with convenient access to centres, community facilities, and higher frequency public transport. Key issues for our next gen neighbourhoods that we've identified through community feedback and our officer investigations relate to sort of the higher order strategic issues around clarity of policy, and then a number of planning and design issues relating to sort of lot size and housing diversity, site cover and setbacks, design diversity and quality, and the lack of tree planting and open space provision in these areas. The impacts that have been observed and inform the policy changes include an appearance and feeling of overdevelopment, a lack of open space, a lack of trees, including street trees and in yards, and a changing neighbourhood character and feel. In response to the key issues and impacts that have been identified, a number of specific policy directions have been developed. These form the basis for the detailed proposed changes in relation to next generation neighbourhoods, and include encouraging housing diversity and affordability. So a more clear and consistent policy around that, and also increased mix of dwelling types and affordable options to support our changing population. Supporting walkable and well-serviced neighbourhoods, so more people living in walkable catchments of train stations and centres, and getting the housing mix and density focused in those catchments. And also supporting design quality, amenity and livability. So looking for improvements around built form variety and interest, encouraging more green space to reduce the perception of overdevelopment, and sensitively integrate our next gen areas in sort of those transitional precincts to sort of lower intensity rural residential areas. So I'm just now going to take you through some of the key proposed changes relating to our next generation neighbourhoods. So firstly, the amendment focuses on getting housing mix and density in the right places. As I said, it's encouraging new housing inside that 800-metre walking distance catchment of train stations and higher order and district centres. And so within that catchment, that sort of 800-metre walking distance catchment, we are proposing changes which include removing the existing maximum density of 75 dwellings per hectare in favour of having no maximum density there. So really encouraging those higher density forms in those areas. Removing the existing complicated requirements that seek to limit available sites and disperse dual occupancy development. So instead, dual occupancies will be encouraged without being limited to particular sites and lot dimensions. And then removing the existing minimum lot dimensions and prescriptive lot type mix requirements for new subdivision layouts. So the intention there being to allow more flexibility to accommodate different dwelling forms, such as terrace dwellings, on a variety of lot sizes, up to 9.5 metres wide. So whereas our current terrace dwelling product is currently limited to lots up to 7.5 metres wide. The amendment also looks at encouraging neighbourhoods with more green. So more open space, more trees, and more landscaping. So to do this, the proposed changes encourage subdivision layouts with more attractive streetscapes. So new street trees, increased breaks between groupings of narrow lots. The breaks may take the form of larger lot types, laneways, or mid-block pedestrian connections to break up those long runs of narrow lots. Townhouse and unit development also have new on-site communal open space requirements where there's 10 or more units proposed. have increased front setbacks and stronger outcomes for deep tree planting to get that green back in our neighbourhoods. There are also new requirements for increased verge space for tree planting to encourage tree planting in laneways in development. So the proposed changes also seek to resolve the impacts of overdevelopment from dwelling houses on small lots. So to achieve this, the amendment proposes requirements for dwelling houses with increased rear setbacks. So the intention being to provide backyards for recreation and open space amenity. The proposed changes also include reduced site cover down to 60% for dwelling houses on smaller lot sizes of 400 square metres or less, whereas the current planning scheme allows up to 75 square metres. So again, tackling that feeling of overdevelopment. The Queensland Development Code side setback standards are also proposed to be varied to support dwellings with eaves for shade and weather protection over our setback spaces. And increased site cover is being supported for terrace dwellings on lots of 300 square metres or less and build up to both side boundaries, so long as those developments are provided with rear laneway access. And the last of our key changes relates to ensuring neighbourhoods are sensitively integrated with our existing communities. So there will be, you'll see new requirements proposed to provide transitions between existing communities and in the rural and rural residential zone and the new development occurring in the next gen precinct or in the neighbouring areas. The requirements to achieve this include encouraging parks and open space areas being located at the interface of these zones, encouraging tree-lined perimeter roads to separate the different zones with planted road verges, and larger lot sizes to transition that development intensity at the interface of those zones. Questions that have come up in relation to next generation neighbourhoods. So we've had a question from one of our registered attendees today, which is, I couldn't see where the missing middle housing was included in the plan. Can you let me know which sections I should look at? So firstly, in response to this question, just wanting to note that the terminology around missing middle is proposed to change to gentle density in the state government's draft Shaping SEQ 2023 update. So this is a new draft regional plan for Southeast Queensland. The draft regional plan update is currently on its own separate public consultation period, and it actually overlaps with our public consultation on the Better Housing Amendment. So it is important to note that the regional plan is state government policy that applies across all Southeast Queensland local government areas and is separate to our Better Housing Amendment. You can find out more and make a submission on the state government's website if you are interested in the regional plan. Missing middle housing that's described in the current Southeast Queensland regional plan includes housing types that are sort of typically defined as a dwelling house, dual occupancy, multiple dwellings, for example. And the regional plan sets out that missing middle housing can include sort of many different detached, attached or semi-detached dwellings. So forms such as terrace houses, townhouses, apartments, and including apartments in building heights between 1 to 3 stories or up to 6 stories. So our next generation neighbourhoods are already supporting missing middle housing types, including terrace dwelling houses, dual occupancy, and multiple dwellings with building heights sort of predominantly up to 8.5 metres, so that 1 to 2 story mark, and up to 12 metres or higher in some specific locations. Our proposed amendment seeks to make it easier to develop missing middle housing types in these well-serviced locations, so areas close to public transport and centres with employment and services. For the separate regional plan update consultation, you can find out more and make submissions at the state's project webpage, as I said earlier, which is just available there on the slide for you.